The judge tells us to go pick a jury, whether it's an accident case or a medical malpractice case or a wrongful death case. Now, the attorneys go into the jury room. How do we overcome obvious juror bias when they tell us, I don't believe anybody should ever bring a lawsuit. I don't think anybody should ever receive compensation because they suffered an injury. How do we, as the attorneys bringing a lawsuit on behalf of an injured victim, overcome that obvious bias? You want to know the answer? Come join me for a moment as I share with you some great information. Hi, I'm Gerry Oginski. I'm a New York medical malpractice and personal injury attorney practicing law here in the state of New York. So now we go into the jury room, and there are 25 or 30 people from the community who've now been summoned to appear for jury duty. They had no idea what this case is about. And it's my job as the first person who gets up to talk to them, to give them some idea of what their job is, what their function is, what we're doing there. And then I can only tell them a little bit about the case. We can't go into details because it's not the courtroom. Nobody's presenting evidence at that point. But I have an obligation to learn from each of these potential jurors who they are, where they came from, what biases they have. Now, I will tell you, if you ask somebody if they're biased, what do you think they're going to say? They say, of course not. Nobody ever wants to admit that they're actually biased. But there are certain questions and certain strategies and certain tactics that we can use to identify the fact that they are, in fact, biased and that they are prejudiced. Now, what does prejudice mean? It means they prejudge a particular set of facts. So maybe there's been something in the news that they heard about, but they heard only part of the story. Well, they may have prejudged in their own mind who they believe, who is more likely right than wrong. Well, if something like that occurs, then you can say that somebody is prejudiced, or they're biased in favor of one side or the other. And one of the questions we often will ask is, hey, Mrs. Jones, are you a little closer to the side who believes X, Y, and Z? Or are you a little closer to the side who believes this? But if you come right out and ask somebody, hey, are you biased? Are you prejudiced? The answer, of course, will be, no, I'm not. Well, there are different questions that we can ask. So now, if somebody says, hey, I don't believe in the jury system, I don't believe in civil trials, I don't believe that any injured victim should ever bring a lawsuit. Well, how do we deal with that? Well, we have to deal with it head on, and we have to use that particular juror now as an example to the other people in the room. Because if we don't tackle it head on, you know what's going to happen? He will taint the other jurors in the room. Because now the other people will begin nodding their heads and begin agreeing if we cannot show to them that what he is saying is really not true. And here's something else remarkable that you may not know. My goal in jury selection is not to change someone's opinions and long-held beliefs. That's not my goal, and I have no intention of doing so. And I will come right out and say, I recognize that you have these long-held beliefs, and I'm not here to change your opinion. However, the law in New York says that someone who's injured as a result of someone else's carelessness has an absolute right, an absolute legal right to come into court to seek compensation for all the harms and losses that they've received. And if you cannot acknowledge that and accept that fact, then obviously this is not the right place for you. And then we would hand that person back his card so he can now go back to the jury pool, because we don't want him tainting the other jurors, and at the same time we want to set an example of what is not accepted. We want to set an example of who is the appropriate juror, so that the other jurors recognize, hey, we will not tolerate this type of behavior, and if you have that long-held belief, God bless you. But that does not belong in this case, in this jury room. And that's how we address it. You know, I recognize you're watching this video because you've got questions or concerns about your own particular matter. Well, if you're thinking about bringing a lawsuit and you've got legal questions and your matter happened here in the state of New York, what I encourage you to do is pick up the phone and call me. I can answer your legal questions. You know, there's something I do every single day, and I'd love to talk to you. You can reach me at 516-487-8207 or by email at Gerry, Gerry, at oginski-law.com. That's it for today's video. I'm Gerry Oginski. Have a wonderful day.